Who are you? Beneath the expectations, the labels, and the societal conditioning, what does it truly mean to become you? I'm John Fleming, the founder and lead practitioner of Becoming You. I created Becoming You out of a desire to share my own experience of becoming myself and to support others who are curious about who they are. From a young age, I have been driven by a desire to figure out who I am, why I'm here, and how I can belong while being myself. This is Becoming You, the podcast. Conversations about uncovering, embracing, and being your true self. A place where I dive deep into what it means and what is required to live life as your most authentic self. Through real, honest, and grounded conversations with professionals and people who are walking the path. If you're curious about identity, authenticity, and personal freedom, your own or others, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
So hello and welcome to the Becoming You podcast. This is the first episode. I'm really excited to introduce our very first guest, who is the host of the podcast, John Fleming. Hi, John.
Hi, Jayne. So good to be here with you.
So good to be here too. And thank you for inviting me to have the honour of opening your podcast in this way. It feels like a really special experience to be part of with you. And you asked me, John, to ask you a question that is a question that will be asked by each guest on this podcast, but in a different way with their own unique take on it. So before we get into anything, I'm going to ask you the question I've prepared for you, which is, what does your soul yearn for right now?
What a question. I mean, the answer was almost instant. It was like in big, bold, capital letters flashing up in front of me. And that was love.
Love.
Yeah. And that's been present for a while, actually. Yeah. And not just to clarify, because sometimes I think love gets positioned as a certain thing, and that is romantic love. I think people see that, that's where their go-to in their minds. And that is one element, but actually the type of love that my soul is yearning for is different. It's not necessarily love from another. It could be. There's a big portion of it that's about love from me in nurturing myself. The yearning is present even now, right kind of in my diaphragm. I can feel it, because that's often where I feel my soul is, right in my rib cage in the middle, right down towards the bottom of my diaphragm. Is like I often feel like that's where the essence of who I am lives in my physical body.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when the question came to me, I hesitated with the use of the word soul because it's not a word I would usually use. The essence of me is closer to what I would conceive of that. And it's very different to where I think the question would have gone if I'd asked you, what does your heart yearn for? So as you spoke to that and to the area of your body where you notice it, I noticed an expansion in warmth in me as well.
Yeah. Lovely. Yeah, and I mean, this is so really at the core of what Becoming You is about, because my desire, if you like, or my aim or my goal is to invite people to acknowledge, come in contact with, embrace more the essence of who they are.
I wonder if you might say a little bit more about that then, in terms of the essence of you and who you feel you are, who you feel that is, how it's being embodied by you.
Sure. Yeah, I can. I guess for a long time, I, inverted commas, thought that I was normal. And not to say that I'm not normal. I'm sure there's loads of stuff in my life that is just regular type of stuff that everybody experiences. So I don't want to kind of push out there that I'm in any way special. But definitely as I grew up as a kid, I became aware that the sort of things that my peers were interested in and wanted to do didn't really always align with what I was interested in and what I wanted to do, which is also a common experience. I'm definitely not on my own with that. And I've already shared, on social media, and I've shared on a mail out that I sent, around this process that I have shared around becoming you, which is uncover, embrace, be. And I don't want to oversimplify or kind of make a slogan about this, because, this can be challenging work for people. It can be wonderfully beautiful and bright and light, and it can also be dark and very tough at times. But I do think that there's something to the uncover, embrace, be bit, that about a process of getting in touch with that essence and then living life with that as your kind of North Star, so to speak, your guiding principle. And in the uncover piece, what I've shared so far out there in the public arena is this experience I had when I was 8, which I've always known has been really significant, but I've never really shared it with anyone ever. I don't think I've ever told anybody. I definitely did not tell my family at the time. So that also intrigues me, about how I kept that almost secret, because it felt so sacred that I didn't want anybody to know, because it was really only for me. And even as I step out now and share these things now, I do have a moment sometimes of like, are you betraying yourself? But no, it actually feels really like the right moment now to really be more vocal about some of the experiences I've had, because I'm sure other people have these as well. And that is that one day I was standing in the bathroom in my childhood home, and I had looked in this mirror brushing my teeth every day for years at that point. And this particular day, when I looked in the mirror, I saw myself, which is this kind of profound experience in comparison to all the other times I saw my reflection. But this day I saw me. And that has been hugely significant for me, getting in contact with my essence of myself, and has guided me up until this point, because from that age of about 8, and I don't actually really remember the age. I'm kind of, it's my best guesstimate that it was around that age. It has always guided me, because I think several things happened that day. I realized that there was more to life than going to school and doing what you were told, that I could have this relationship with myself that nobody could take away from me, that nobody could control, which felt very special, that I had that. It was a sanctuary, a place for me to really deeply connect within myself. And then as the years went on, what I noticed was that was also the place where my intuition lived. And when I say that, I think, is it a song or something about the house where something lived? Anyway, it's just a song. I got like a mini earworm there for a second. Side quest. So I have been in a certain way embracing that then. So if you see that first step as a kind of an uncovering, a realization, something becoming clear, and that continuing because it wasn't immediately clear what I now know, and then embracing it. Like I had a choice at that age when that happened, which was I embrace this experience and I internalize it and I get excited about it and I deepen it, or I close the door and go, oh, that was weird, I don't want to have that experience again. For whatever reason, I embraced it and I continue to embrace it. And it's been super important in the development of who I am as a person and as a professional in the world, because it's about my sense of self. It's about my identity. And I'm hugely interested in these questions of who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? What am I here to do? And seeking meaning around those questions. So, of course, in a way, I'm an existentialist, I guess, and I enjoy basking in the exploration of my own identity. And I know that's not for everybody, but it's for me. And what I have found on my journey over the last, I guess, 20 years, because I think at 8 when this happened, it was very subtle and never talked to anybody about it. And I'm not sure how much I did with it until I was about 14. And then at 14, I really broke loose in lots of ways. So for the last 20 years, what I've noticed is that there's not a huge amount of people out there talking about identity. I don't know why, because you have existentialism. You get a lot of people practicing existentialism as a therapy or as a coaching practice. You get people talking about sexual identity. You get people talking about gender identity. So we are talking about identity, but I often feel like we're talking about identity in a very fragmented way. And for me, I've always talked about this metaphor of us being a picture, and every pixel is a part of us. And for me, a pixel or a corner of the picture might be about my sexuality, or a pixel or another corner might be about my gender or my heritage, or all of these different things that for me come together as an expression of who I am in the world, and that painting is always being repainted. But underneath the top layer, there was the original painting, probably got brought in when I was in the womb and painted. And that is still there. So it's like that for me is the essence of who I am. It sits underneath all of these other layers I've been busy painting. And it will always be there because that was the original, if you like. And it sits under all of the other versions of who I am on any given day, week, month, year. And then I continue to get to play with that. And that's quite exciting for me.
I can feel that. I'm really curious about the experience that you shared, that you had, if you were comfortable to share a bit more of why that was so profound for you. What was your experience when you actually saw yourself that day in the mirror?
I was a bit shocked. Yeah, I was a bit shocked. I felt like I was in this space where I could talk to myself. And I don't think I had ever really considered that as an option before. And then as the years have gone by, I've often gone back to the mirror to have a conversation with myself. Like part of my routine sometimes is to go to the mirror and say, "You're doing good. Keep it up." Or I'll say, "I love you." And it has a different impact. And it's not about the physicality. That's the thing. Because I think that's what you see when you see your reflection. But whatever it is about me and the mirror, it seems to allow me to access this place in myself that otherwise seems like a mystery, I think. In that particular day, initially, I think I froze because I was like, oh my God, this feels like an outer body experience. This feels odd. This feels strange. So there may have been a little bit of resistance or kind of uncomfortability or panic right in the middle. And then I kind of was like, oh, this is cool. I like this. Yeah. And I kind of like that it's a bit odd, because I am queer in so many ways. And now the age I am now and the place I am now in my life, I can really name that in lots of ways. And my expression of my identity, I am queer, which for me means that I'm typically different from my peers, from the majority. And I think that was maybe the first moment that I got to embrace my queerness.
There's a mischievousness I sense with that, like a real playfulness, the excitement.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but think of a quote, which I'm not certain which book I read this in, but it was at the time when I was studying integrative art psychotherapy. And it was about the eyes being the window to the soul. And just thinking about that mirror giving you the opportunity to really see yourself, reveal yourself to yourself as you looked into your eyes. Like you suggest, it wasn't about your physical appearance. It was about you seeing into you, deeply into yourself.
Yes. And I know that now. And I think at 8, I didn't have the wherewithal to really understand. So at 8, it was more of a kind of embryonic experience, if you will. And it's like since then I've been able to slap loads of meaning and understanding on it, which has been helpful and useful. But at 8, it was so raw. It's like I actually didn't even really understand what was happening. And I find it so curious that I didn't tell anybody. That I also find curious. Now that is that does line up with me in the world about keeping secrets of things that I feel are precious or important and are just for me. That would be tend to what I would do with my relationship with myself. But because it was kind of spooky, I think back now, like going, why didn't I run downstairs to my mum and be like, oh my God, this weird thing just happened? So there was also maybe a certain unconscious knowing in me that actually nobody needs to know about this because this is something for you. And I guess that ties back again to becoming you. Is that like it's not about other people. It's not even about me and what I think is the right way of becoming you. So like I'm talking about and sharing, I stood in front of a mirror and I've had X experience or this experience. Just because they were my experiences doesn't mean they're going to be yours or that they should be yours. Because really becoming you is about starting a conversation, opening up a space to really invite whatever it is that is going to happen for you as an individual and to be really curious and excited about, I wonder what it's going to be. Rather than a kind of a cookie cutter approach and getting, me buying 25 mirrors and standing everybody in front of them and hoping they all have an outer body experience. It's like that's really not what I'm trying to do here. I'm sharing it because I think it's useful and inspirational for people to say, okay, well, this is what I've had, but doesn't mean that that's right for everybody.
And I really am taking from what you shared the significance of that moment in that embryonic stage of you becoming you. So I'm wondering how,
yes,
in the years that then followed between then and now, how has that evolved and developed and grown? What has led to you becoming who you are today beyond that day when you were 8?
So many things, so many things have happened. Of course, like anybody's life, it's full of experiences. So I might pick a few, I guess, that I feel are kind of significant, that in some way kind of maybe turned me in a certain direction or influenced me to do something. The first one I think that's significant to name is that when I was about 10 or 11, my mum's best friend died. She had worked with her. She had cancer and she passed away. And although I wasn't very close to this woman, I would have spent a lot of time around her, and she had a daughter a similar age to me. So my mum and her used to meet up, and her daughter and I would be together then as well. So there was a connection. And I remember my mum being profoundly upset, naturally, and that had a huge impact on me. I had heard of and experienced death before that because in Ireland, you kind of grew, well, when I grew up anyway, it's probably different now. You grew up going to funerals and seeing open caskets. It's just like my parents would just take you. It's just normal. You just bring the kids, not because they knew the person, but it's like you don't get childcare so that you can go to the funeral. You just bring them with you, particularly in rural Ireland. So I grew up going to funeral parlours and seeing dead bodies and knowing death was a reality, and it never really impacted on me too much. It wasn't a secret, it wasn't hidden. But this death was different because I think I got to experience for the first time what grief was like. And I was seeing that through my mum. It was like she was a vessel for me and all the other people. And a few things happened around this. My mum was doing the flowers with other people in the church for the funeral, and a red admiral butterfly landed on the flower arrangement, and it was November, so it's unusual to have a butterfly in November. And my mum said, oh, I think I won't mention the person's name because there is I don't know if it's a perspective, a myth, a belief that butterflies represent souls. So this really got me into the idea then that souls were a thing. Then I became curious about, I wonder what my soul is like. And then a Simpsons episode came out where Bart sold his soul and all of the trials and tribulations he went through for selling his soul. And I was thinking, oh my God, no, my soul is something to be protected. I don't want to give that up. That feels really sacred. So it was like these experiences were starting to give a name to the experience I had when I was 8. I was like, oh, maybe that's what that was. So that feels quite significant. And then at 14, for various different reasons, which I won't get into right here, right now, but I might share at different varying points throughout the podcast seasons, I started seeing the school psychologist. And I have more or less on and off for the last 20 years, 21 years this year, seen a counselor, coach, or psychotherapist. I've been living my life in a way that I'm constantly exploring myself. And that started at 14. So because it started at 14, that has had a huge impact, of course, on the type of life I'm living, what I chose to do for a profession. So it's clear to me that there's always been a very interest early on exploring myself and doing personal development in different forms. And because it started at 14, of course, I, in some ways, don't know a life where you wouldn't do it. Actually, I've now been doing that for longer than I hadn't. So I think that's really important to name as well, because I appreciate that's not everybody's experience in the world. Whereas I've been kind of immersed in it, I've been bathing in figuring out who I am and being really excited about that exploration and what it surfaces up. And then I think the next thing to name is that when I was 16, I went to see an aurosoma practitioner, which commonly is called color therapy. My parents said, would you like to do this? Because the GP recommended it at the time. He had a very progressive GP. And I was like, yeah, cool. I love color. But like little did I know what I was really getting myself into, because it was like the experience I had at 8. Now in the color therapy, I was like, oh, this is like that on steroids. It's like I'm feeling all of these things that I've never really felt before. This is quite a lot in some ways, but also like feels really nourishing. And the practitioner that did the aurosoma also did integrated energy therapy, IET. It's kind of like Reiki. I used to have both. I think I went 3 or 4 times. And that really invited this big kind of, I'm kind of resistant to using the word awakening, because I think that word gets misused a lot. But there was a kind of an awakening of my spirituality, I think, at that point. And again, that's something that is deeply personal for me around my own faith. And having grown up in a Catholic country, which had a huge influence on me in my early years, being very conservative, restrictive, repressive, I felt actually almost like I was being reborn, because I felt like now I didn't have the shackles of Catholicism on me anymore, and I could really be who I am, not what this conservative society expected of me. And within 12 months, I had come out as gay. So, that's really significant for me to name, because it's like, I wonder, or at least I'm curious about, how long would it have taken me to get there if I hadn't had these experiences of kind of releasing the binds of quite a conservative religion that openly did not accept gay people at that point, still really doesn't, but has made a lot of progress around it in recent years. And that was another moment of, oh, this is my essence again. This is that part of me that keeps popping up. And, I don't want to give the impression that from 8 to 16, for those 8 years, it was like this was around all of the time, because there was long periods of it like being tumbleweed, of nothing being present, but then something would happen and I'd be like, oh, it's that thing again. There I am. That's me. So then, of course, I went in search of it because I wanted more of it. I wanted it all of the time.
And what did that mean then in the years between then and now?
Oh, huge amounts. Because of course, once I became an adult, I had so much more freedom, so then
Right.
if there was a course to
Right.
be on, I was on it. So retreats, personal development courses, personal development workbooks, self-help books. I remember I think I was 18 and I was walking from the town my local town to where I worked. I had a weekend job in a hotel. And the book I had in my hand, I was walking this very long footpath along by the sea, was called The Power of the Subconscious Mind. So it's like that just gives you like an insight into. So it was like if somebody steered me in a direction, I was like, oh yeah, cool. And it was my GP who invited me to get that book.
Sounds like the world's most awesome GP, this person.
She is great, I have to admit. We're very lucky in West Cork where I grew up. That's another thing to name, is that West Cork is like a melting pot, or I think it still is, but in the 90s and 90s it particularly was, because what happened in the 80s and early 90s is that we had a lot of French, German, Dutch move to West Cork and buy vacant or derelict properties along the coast. Because Ireland was still really recovering from the 80s. And these people brought a lot of culture with them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
also a lot of alternative or holistic approaches.
Okay.
And then you had this really rural Catholic farming community mingling with this, and it just seemed to work. There was almost like just this acceptance of each other. No animosity, no us and them. It was like all of a sudden farmers were going for osteopathy and acupuncture. It just really worked. And I grew up,
Oh,
I rode the coattails of that. So for me, it was just normal. I'd look at my siblings and it was very different.
I guess there was what sounds like an openness in you that allowed for that.
Also, time. So the closest to me is 10 years older than me. So I think it was like, it was just about what was happening at that time, that mingling was just really present when I was a kid, and not so much for them. They were off doing other things. They were adults at that point.
Yeah. As you did that with your hands, I was thinking about how much more malleable you maybe were as well than your
Yeah.
siblings at that age and stage. And
Very possible. Yeah, more open maybe. Yeah.
And so becoming you, and you've mentioned what that encompasses. At what stage did that start to come through you and take shape and form in terms of concept for your work?
So another defining moment was in 2017. I was working a full-time job as a business analyst consultant for a company, and I was out working with their clients. And one morning I had had a dream, and I don't usually remember dreams. And I was intrigued about this dream because it seemed, I don't know, there was just something about it. So I have a teacher, because of course one of the things that I did when I in my 20s was I trained as an Aura-Soma practitioner, because it had such a profound impact on me. I just really wanted to embrace that way of working. And my trainer was also a dream analyst, a Jungian dream analyst. So I rang her up and I said, I've had a dream and I want to come and have it analysed. She said, okay, write it down, all the details, so that you have it, because you'll forget it. So I did. I went to see her. I just happened to be in Dublin that day. I went to her home. We sat down. She analysed my dream. And I walked out her front door, sat into my car, opened my phone, and I wrote my resignation letter and sent it to my boss. And I won't get into what the dream contained and what all the analysis was, but basically it was about me really finding a way to creatively express my skills that I have to offer the world in a new way. And I'd already been training for several years at that point to be a psychotherapist. I was already a trained coach, but I mainly just worked in organizations. And basically I was leaving my job now to set up my own business. So this really is the beginning of Becoming You. Becoming You was originally called John Fleming Holistic Health and Education. Then it was just called johnfleming.ie. And the Becoming You name got birthed in 2021, where I was brainstorming ideas with my business mentor, and I landed on Becoming You. And I texted her and I said, I think this is it. And again, this is an example of me trusting my intuition, just kind of following my gut, because I don't want to come across like I'm some really smart marketeer or whatever, because I'm not. But I listen out for direction and I follow it, because I had designed the logo for Becoming You in 2019. And the logo has a butterfly in it. I had been really taken with the whole process of metamorphosis during my psychotherapy training, and how the caterpillar becomes a butterfly and how it has to just turn into the gloop, and how the caterpillar has the imaginal cells already in it for the butterfly, and just like how that really bleeds the essence. It's like it's already there, it's in you. And I was like, oh my God, the logo, the name, it just fits, it fits together. And even then, I didn't really get how that connected to my story of becoming you. Like that happened then in 2023. I was like, oh, there's another layer to this. And then last year, it was when I got the Uncover Embrace Be. So it's been a very emergent organic process where I just keep listening out, and I keep getting signals to go, oh, that's another bit of this. And here I am now, ready to kind of turn a different direction, I think, and share with others what's been going on inside me for a long time, in the hope that it will inspire, stimulate, encourage, invite others into an exploration of themselves that they find meaningful for them.
Yeah, beautiful. It really does feel like a very precious unfolding and sharing that also somehow feels like the next stage of you becoming who you are. Yes. More fully.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And for the podcast, with this being the first embryotic beginning of that, like what's in this gloop? What is it that is your vision for the butterfly that this podcast becomes?
So a podcast is something that I have some experience with, because I am the founder and host on the Transactional Analysis podcast. So I've had a little bit of experience of podcasting, and it really works for me. I love verbally expressing myself. This is another part of me really realizing who I am and embracing the parts of me that really work for me. I love talking. I love chatting. I love conversations. I love getting into deep explorations of things and spitballing ideas. And I find that really exciting. And I know a lot of people love listening to podcasts. I do. I feel like this is a really good way to share with people. And also, I don't believe there is a silver bullet. I think it's con. This idea that you can do one thing, or that there's the perfect approach. I've tried not them all, but nearly all. And I feel like they all have their place, whether it's yoga or massage or psychotherapy or counseling or coaching or aurosoma or whatever it is out there in the personal development realm, where there is a melting pot of so many different approaches. I don't think there's a silver bullet. And I often think that a mixture of things at different times and stages of your journey are really important. So the other idea of this podcast is to share with people what's on offer and how might it help them, because I get a lot of people coming to me saying, John, I just don't know what to do. And I spend a lot of my professional life triaging and signposting people to things that might be suitable for them right now, where they're at. So I guess the podcast is also intended to support people maybe to be able to do that on themselves, by themselves, because that's what I've been doing. I've just been like, oh, I'll just give this a go and see what it's like. Almost like a food critic tours restaurants, I've been touring self-help personal development therapy, and seeing, oh, what's this like? What are the pros and cons? What works? What doesn't work? And yeah, I'm going to have a variety of different people with different perspectives across different seasons with different purposes. So it's going to be very eclectic.
I love that. I wish I had known that now somehow, in terms of how I would have introduced you. Like a connoisseur of multiple modalities, of eclectic approaches, something like that. The next guest you have coming up for your first episode, I'm wondering if you were to ask them a question that you begin that interview with, what question might you ask them?
I think my question for the next guest is, when did you first realize you have a connection with yourself?
I can't help but taking that question in and somehow responding to it myself. I feel like that offers so much to any of the listeners coming to the close of this podcast for themselves, and then the curiosity to see how the guest answers that. I'm wondering.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to know what other people's version of the mirror story might be.
Maybe you'll find out. How can people share that with you, John, if they feel to?
Oh my God. I would love that if people shared their story with me. Please email me. Absolutely. My email will be in the show notes if you want to share it with me privately. If you feel like sharing it openly, then, post underneath the post for this episode on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. Very happy for you to share there, and I'll take a read and respond to you. But yeah, if you'd like to share more privately, I'd love to receive emails from people and hear their stories.
Wonderful. Oh, John, it's been a pleasure spending time with you this morning to record together, and I can't wait to listen myself to your podcast as it unfolds. Thank you so much for having me.
Likewise, Jayne, and thank you for guiding us in and opening up the space for this to begin.
An honour. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for listening. I'm curious about what this conversation has stimulated for you. Thoughts, feelings, curiosity. If this episode intrigued you, hit follow to be notified about new episodes. I know these conversations are valuable to me, and if you think they're valuable too, please do leave a review. Leaving a review allows more people to discover the podcast. You can scroll down to ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and click write a review. You can also connect with Becoming You on Instagram and TikTok by searching the handle at becoming_you__. The links are in the show notes too. You can also visit www.becomingyou.ie to explore the idea of becoming yourself. Thanks for tuning in. Bye for now.